All right, welcome back to another episode of Side Note, the podcast dedicated to underground electronic dance music and all things related. I am your host, Nick, and this week it is my pleasure to introduce Marco from Synthetik Minds and 6am. We had Gia here a few weeks back, and as a follow-up, really happy to have Marco. So thank you for driving down here, man.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed, listening to your talk with Gia. So I'm really happy that you invited me here also. Yeah,
like anything I can do to kind of help, give voice to people in our local scene. Obviously, is a growing platform, but I for one, as like a longtime raver, have loved kind of following everything that goes on, and always wished that I could like hear what the people who are actually making it happen are actually like doing and what's on their minds. So so stoked to have you here.
Thank you.
So I guess just to kick things off, you're the chief growth officer at 6am, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And then in addition to that, you have your own banner. It's called Synthetik Minds.
Correct.
that does techno parties. So I guess one, can you talk about what your role is at 6am and kind of, how you fit in with kind of everything that 6am does, which you guys do a lot. And then also talk about how your own project kind of fits into it.
Yeah, it's a little complicated, to be honest. And I realize that because as you mentioned, my involvement with 6am, as well as the fact that I started Synthetik Minds. But I started with 6am back at December of 2015. I had just moved to LA, and I found a kind of a job insert on Facebook. 6am was looking for blog contributors, so people just writing a couple of blog articles a month. And I applied, and I got the position. And for me, it was just a way of kind of getting into the scene here at a local level after moving from Chicago, and I didn't really know many people. And that kind of snowballed into my role today through basically becoming the content director, so taking over the entire content of 6am.
Okay.
Social media, the blog, and all of that growth that has gone on since the beginning of 2016. And then I started Synthetik Minds on the side because I kind of wanted to contribute with regards to events to the LA techno scene. I was really passionate about bringing more acts, more underground acts, and an improved production, or at least my vision of the production level that we could do in LA. Originally I didn't envision to be working with 6am in the sense that Synthetik Minds was not meant to sort of be partnering with 6am on events. It was meant to be doing kind of smaller things. But then kind of a fortuitous run of events meant that we ended up partnering for our first party together, where we brought Ashley Faze, for his LA debut.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and then that event went well. We really worked well together. And so whilst I continued working with 6am on the content side, we decided to collaborate on the event side. And then as 6am kept growing, and the content kept growing, the events kept growing. And then on top of that, we launched our apparel line, as well as some content services that we do. So I then kind of took over also the event director role at 6am.
Okay.
And then as that kind of kept growing, Gia and I talked, and we realized that I was really getting involved with every single department of 6am when it came to new initiatives and growth. And that a lot of the ideas that, I brought into the company since I started resulted in 6am's, exponential growth since 2016. And that's where the role of chief growth officer came in.
Got it.
So I basically work side by side with Gia on growth initiatives within all of 6am.
Okay.
But then I also directly handle and spearhead all of the events that 6am has anything to do with. A lot of which includes Synthetik Minds as a partner, as a financial, collaborative, and production partner, but some of them don't. So some of the events that 6am does do not include Synthetik Minds, and some of them do.
Got it. I mean, I guess, how do you make that distinction about like what Synthetik Minds is involved in versus what it isn't? Because no matter what, you're involved, correct?
Sure, yeah. Correct. Yeah. So I think first I would say that the thing that we look at is, Synthetik Minds was kind of started as a more underground niche brand. And although like I don't want to totally pigeonhole what we do, there have been some parties that 6M has done that are more on the kind of non-techno, not strictly house. Maybe it's a more tech house, which is not really Synthetic Minds' wheelhouse, just from a branding perspective. And therefore, 6M has partnered with other event partners in LA whose bread and butter is, for example, more tech house sound or more deep house or more day parties and things like that. And so we don't want to force something just for the sake of the partnership. So even though like I will still work on maybe the booking or the social media promotion or all of the marketing or even like helping with the venue and the production, I'm just simply not, if you will, an event partner for that event, but I have my role within 6am in spearheading that event to success and delivering a good event for the attendee.
Got it. So I guess, so it sounds like your kind of initial expertise was in kind of content and social media, and then it kind of grew into event spearheading as well as, so you're kind of managing both. It's just Correct. Like your role has expanded considerably.
Yeah, I would say so. And I would say that also like, I wasn't planning to do events when I moved to LA. I was a promoter in Chicago beforehand, but I thought I kind of like gave it up. I thought like, that was it. But if you will, I sort of just took the opportunity that was there. And then I saw that 6am could really do a lot more in LA than they were doing when I first came into the company. And it kind of just grew from that. It wasn't really a planned thing. It's just one kind of thing led to another.
Right. And then I guess one question I've long had is like, when you see multiple promotion groups kind of putting together a party, right? Like you might see Incognito and 6am together or Synthetic Minds and 6am.
Sure.
What exactly is it entailed in that partnership? Is it that everyone is kicking in part of the expenses to cover the party and then sharing the profits at the end, or what other like potential arrangements are there?
I think it's that's one of them for sure. Usually, there is an element of risk involved with any business, right?
Right.
Even more so with our kind of events, if you will. And so when you're doing a partnership, you're sharing the risk and the rewards financially,
Right.
And that helps to mitigate things when you're kind of growing. You're taking risks with bookings and you're doing a lot more underground stuff. Maybe you're competing with, I don't know, Insomniac doing a massive party that day or
Right.
a festival that weekend that you were not expecting or whatever when you first did the booking. But then you're also sharing the marketing efforts. So the two companies could have their own social media following, their own email list. You're also sharing a lot of the operational and production effort and work that needs to be put in. And, for some of these events that have gotten bigger, like take, for example, Compound. Compound is an event with 4 partners.
Okay.
Synthetic Minds, 6am, Dirty Epic, and Incognito.
Yep.
And Compound's a big production projects, right? And because of the nature of the events being, in the more underground space, we also have limited time to set up the venues and all of these kind of things. And so by having 4 partners that we can share the load on the bookings, on the marketing, on the production, on the operations, things just get a lot easier.
Got it.
For everybody.
I think one of the things that really impressed me, meeting Gia and now you, is kind of like how business-minded and entrepreneurial you guys are. It's like, because I work in like finance for a living, and so I meet like a lot of entrepreneurs and COOs and CEOs and shit, right? And I find that like it's no different sort of talking to you guys versus like talking to them. Whereas I feel like growing up in rave, it didn't always used to be like that. Sure. Like promoters didn't used to be so sort of organized and methodical. Is that something that you guys kind of intentionally set out to create, or does it just happen to be that way because of, I think Gia came from finance as well?
Sure.
Is it, like where does that sort of business-oriented culture really come from?
Yeah, I would say, Gia comes from an accounting finance background. I majored in entrepreneurship.
Okay.
I went to business school. I don't think it was intentionally that way from the beginning. In fact, I think, we have made our mistakes and learned our lessons through perhaps not being as business-minded as we could have been. And I think that that's a problem to some degree in this industry, it's interesting because the word business techno goes around a lot these days,
Right.
and with a negative connotation, right? But at the same time, it's like if you're really trying to build something that's meaningful, you're really trying to grow a scene, and you're trying to be consistent and to be able to deliver, really professional, well executed experiences for your local community. You got to do things right, and you got to be able to continue doing them. And the first party I did in LA, I was told by somebody that there is no money to be made in techno, and that techno parties will never make money. And now, when I set off to do parties, my intention was never, let's make money. I want to make X amount of money. But it just stands to reason, in my opinion, that if you want to be able to keep doing this, unless you have a trust fund.
Right, it has to be profitable.
You got to just be able to reinvest the money that you're making, so therefore you have to make some money to continue doing the parties at a bare minimum at the same level of quality. Now, it would also stand to reason, at least the way I think, that you would always want to improve the quality of your events, of your bookings, of the experience, make things better for your attendees. Mm-hmm. And so all of that takes money. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes. So it's not about, selling out or cashing out, but it's about doing things right so that you're providing a platform for your attendees where they can really escape and have a great experience. But also we started to think a lot about our staff, people that have been in this industry for a long time and that want to make a living in this industry. We're not trying to become millionaires. We're just trying to make a living doing what we love.
Yeah.
And so by really just applying basic business standard operating procedures and so on, and by purposefully doing so, especially in recent years, we've grown a lot more stable, and we're just able to provide a platform, hire more people, and improve the way we execute events, and as well as the other things that we are invested in.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think, like I said, from my interactions with you guys and what I see of what you're doing online and what I've seen of your events, it's like these guys are like highly, highly organized, right? This is not the like fly by the seat of your pants promoter of or you've seen that movie Groove from back in the day, right? Yeah. This is not Groove.
And we've gone through that.
Right.
We've made a ton of mistakes. 6M has been around for, since 2008. Synthetic Minds has only been around for 4 years. Our anniversary is coming up in 2 years, but I was a promoter since 2011.
Okay.
And in Chicago, I made all of the mistakes that are all related to bad business practices. So it's just learning from those mistakes and consciously deciding, hey, we just got to be better, do better for ourselves, for our team, for the people we hire, for the people we want to hire, and for our community. Because if we have our stuff in order internally, then we could just deliver a better experience for everybody.
Right. So I guess taking a step back, and I asked this of all of my guests, in terms of what was your personal rave story that kind of prompted you to find a career in this, to be a promoter in Chicago, and then to come here and work with 6am?
Yeah. So Chicago, it kind of all happened sort of by chance, where I was a college student and I was going out to shows, and a promoter at a local club, his name is Andrew Dalpino. He used to have a promotion company called VI Peeps, and he saw that I was bringing a lot of people. I was just rolling deep with the crew, partying, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to kind of get paid in cash and drink tickets to do what you're already doing?" And I'm like, "How does it work? You'll have a password at the door. They say your name, and then every week there's a tally, and then you get paid per head, and then you get free drink tickets." I'm like, "Wow!" So not only do I keep partying, I get to do it for free, and I get make money, right? And I was in college, and also paying for my last year of college myself. At the time, I was basically managing an Italian restaurant too, in the evenings and the weekends. And so it just made sense to start that. And that kind of snowballed, where I then just networked, met more people at the club, met more people at festivals, and then just built this promotion group with another partner at the time. His name is Elwin. and this promotion group was called House of Shy.
Okay.
House Music, Chicago.
Right.
And House because we're welcoming people to our house, so it all kind of makes sense. And we had a really good run. I mean, we were rolling deep. Sometimes hundreds of people in one night would go to a club and use our password. We had a merch run. We had our own flags at festivals. It was kind of like cool, but we never really got to really doing our own parties. We were just sub-promoters in the city. And that just ran its course. And then when I moved to LA, I wasn't planning to do events, as I mentioned before. But I went to ADE, and this was in October of 2016.
Oh, shit.
And at ADE, I went to several amazing parties, but I remember this one specific party, which was at Melkweg. It was Dave Clark, his night at Melkweg.
Famous Dave Clark.
Yeah,
right?
that he does every Friday night. And one of the headliners was Luke Slater.
Shit.
Back to back with FaZe. And there's like a lot of full circle stories there.
Right.
But I was sitting there and I was just enjoying the show, and I was having a good time. And I came out of it and I'm like, damn, why can we not have more of this in LA? Like, I looked on Rare, I'm like, FaZe has never played at LA, but he's here, he's headlining this massive like space here in Amsterdam. Luke Slater last played in LA, I don't remember, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, probably in the early 2000s or something.
Right, crazy, right? So I was like, what's going on? This is not a slight to anything that was happening in LA, but it just made me want to contribute, just made me want to do my part. That's all it was. And I came back and I was like, Gia, we got to do this. Please let me help with the bookings. We can do more than what we're doing. And he gave me a chance. And that's kind of like how that started. And then I started Synthetic Minds a few months later, end of February of 2017.
Wow. Yeah. That is like a great origin story in terms of seeing some goats, at ADE.
Absolutely.
So I guess now that you are kind of behind the wheel of your own promoting company and at 6 a.m., is there a particular sound that you're trying to promote in particular, or aesthetic? What goes into deciding who you're booking, I guess is the question.
Yeah. As a fan, what I love to listen to is a variety of techno, to be honest, from the hard and industrial and ravey acid, but I also really, really love deep and hypnotic techno. A lot of great Japanese, Italian deep and hypnotic producers. I also love the old Detroit sound, and I also love progressive house. Mm-hmm. I started with progressive house.
Yes,
and a little bit of the older side of trance, not the uplifting side, but the more driving side of trance.
Progressive trance.
Exactly. And so that's overall what I book. But I realize I know what the market wants at the moment. The truth is that in the US, kind of like in Europe, there's definitely a bigger demand for a kind of a bit of a harder, faster type of techno right now, which I really enjoy myself. So the bookings, for example, between January and March of this year, we started with I Am Model, sold out show last week. That's obviously hard and fast. We have 9x9, hard acid techno next week. But then, in February, we have Ken, who's on Lost and Found, and in Junadeep, so that's progressive. In March, we haven't announced yet, but we have one of the Detroit techno legends, absolute legends, coming back to LA for the first time in I don't know how many years.
Wow.
I can't say who it is yet. And then we have a deep hypnotic night later in March. So in the first 3 months, I'm just trying to showcase everything that I like and that I think, I see the promoter's job as kind of a tastemaker a little bit for the scene. We have to educate the scene on what's good. Right?
Yeah.
So I try to kind of do it all a little bit.
Yeah, actually, very interesting because I had seen the new posting for the Ken, and Anton Tomas is going to play at that. And I was like, that seems very different from what I've normally seen from 6 a.m. But I appreciate that, you guys are sort of hitting the full spectrum.
Yeah.
And I guess another question is, you mentioned that the market has sort of demanded, or these days demands kind of a harder, faster techno sound. Where do you think that has come from, and what kind of other changes have you seen kind of in the market in the time that you've been doing this?
Yeah. not sure where it comes from. I have a theory that in the United States, at least, a lot of bass fans, trance fans, fans of harder sounds but of different genres are more drawn to the harder sounds of techno.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because there are similarities.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my theory there, because sometimes when I see people on Instagram or Twitter that are super into like at IHE models, like I notice a lot of trance fans are into IHE models, for example. And IHE model sound does sometimes feature kind of trancey, uplifting moments, and then like some kind of drops that kind of resemble some of the trance drops or things like that. So I see there's parallels there to be drawn. But in terms of originally in Europe, I think it's going back to kind of a 90s rave revival a little bit.
Right, yeah.
There was an acid, so late 80s, early 90s, and then there's that hard ravier sound that was kind of popular, because also like even harder sounds like kind of hardcore and gabber are even a little bit more popular than they were maybe like 5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like, that shit was popular in like late 90s, early 2000s,
Absolutely.
and then disappeared. And I feel like the BPMs at those speeds also kind of went away for a while.
Yeah, we went into minimal.
Yeah.
And then we went into more like straightforward 4x4 techno, kind of the Berghain stuff.
Yep.
And of course, Berghain kind of features a lot, but like I'm talking about your Osgutton residents, right? It's more of that Luke Slater, Function, Phase, and of course, Marcel Dettman, Ben Clark, and Boris, and all of those are fantastic artists. I also noticed that overall there is a throwback moment, fashion-wise.
Yeah.
Right? Back to the 90s.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's connected, but I notice a lot of the DJs that do play these genres are also, there's just this connection back to those decades, the late 80s and the 90s. And I found that connection in fashion. I found that connection in music.
Right.
I haven't dug deep enough. I think this was a great article to write. I'm going to speak to my content team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there's a connection between fashion and music there, and that kind of throwback to those years.
It's interesting because I do feel like as every generation comes up, they sort of go back 20 years and kind of revive, right? So, like I'm in my late 30s. So like in the minimal era, I feel like the 80s kind of made a comeback kind of within that. Like that was like, oh, we're reviving 80s aesthetics.
Yeah.
And I remember like being younger, like in high school, and the 70s had kind of revived. So we're at a point now where like the 90s are being revived, right? So it makes me wonder, like,
we're gonna go back to minimal next.
Yeah, are we gonna get to the point where the 2000s get revived and everyone starts dressing like the Backstreet Boys and like cheesy anthemic trance becomes a thing again?
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't be mad at. Like I enjoyed the cheesy anthemic trance back in the day, but it's definitely went away, right? So I feel like maybe that's for 2024 or whatever. Like
could be that and minimal. I could totally see also like minimal that the minimal that started in the early 2000s, like
I know
the
what you're
Richie
talking about.
Hawtin,
Yeah.
Minus, that kind of sound.
Yeah.
Perhaps making a little bit of a comeback. But tech house is actually getting huge. I mean, tech house is kind of the new EDM. That's kind of like the trend. I mean, if you look at like the Coachella Festival lineup that just dropped, there's a ton of tech house, and like Insomniac Festivals, tech house is now taking kind of center stage, the big stages. We're not talking about the side stage anymore, the Factory 93. I'm talking about like your more techie tech house, if you will.
Yeah. Like
That's
people
also,
like Fisher or stuff like that, right?
Yeah, your Lee Foss kind of stuff, Jamie Jones, that kind of stuff is also really, really popular. It's also a funnel for people that, again, were into EDM, more EDM mainstream stuff, and are funneling into the underground through tech house.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definitely supportive of that trend, right?
Sure.
Like, it's certainly that music to me is more interesting than EDM. So
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we all had our journeys, right? I always say nobody was in the womb listening to Berghain techno. Maybe a few people were, a lot of us, we started with tech house, EDM, dubstep, progressive.
Yeah, everyone starts with like the most accessible thing, and then drills deeper.
We all have our journey.
So one of the things I also wanted to ask was, you guys are throwing parties in kind of a post-pandemic, or I mean, we're still in the pandemic, but like in this late pandemic era. Like, what are some of the major challenges that you guys are seeing? I mean, I'm sure there must be many. One of the ones that I talked about with Gia when he was here was just inflation, right? Just to bring in like broader, like kind of economic issues. Everything's getting more expensive. So
Yeah, everything's 30 to 50% more expensive.
30 to 50% more expensive. Does that include DJ bookings as well?
No,
Okay.
I feel like DJs are and the management and the agencies are also understanding of the issues that promoters have gone through. But venues are more expensive, staffing is more expensive, production is more expensive, and I'm not saying it's unjustly more expensive, but it's definitely become harder to do smaller events, and people kind of don't understand that. Like, it really doesn't make sense to do an event less than 400 people in attendance financially. And we do them. We are taking risks on some bookings of events that are around that, or maybe 300, 350, and we may lose money, but we still want to do the booking, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But if I have to be sincere with you, yeah, that's definitely a challenge. And the other challenge, which it's not a challenge that we've taken upon ourselves, but trying to keep everybody happy. Because no matter what you do with like COVID protocol or the decisions you make, there's somebody bitching and complaining.
Right. Yeah. I mean, did you just gotta like brush it off?
You gotta make your choice and stick with it. Try to be consistent with your choice, and feel good about the choices that you've made, and not trying to not have the mentality that you have to please everybody or even have to please the majority, because the majority can be louder, right, on social media. It's kind of like that kind of Yelp phenomena where it's easier to complain than just say I'm okay with this.
Right.
And so, we live in a polarized world, and there's nothing more politicized and polarized than what's going on with COVID in our country. And so we just made a decision at the beginning of the pandemic, and we're sticking with that decision, and that's making some people upset in both camps.
Yeah, you can't make everyone happy. Yeah.
That's what it is.
But the fact is, you guys are still pulling off events in what must be probably the most challenging environment that you've ever encountered, right?
It is. It's definitely tough. We've put a lot of measures in place. We have, a COVID team at the door. We firstly, we either require full vaccination or negative COVID tests. We truly believe that people, I'm fully vaccinated, third jab and everything. That's my personal belief. I also have the personal belief. It's my personal belief. It doesn't necessarily mean it's everybody in the company, but that people should have the choice to attend events safely. And if that choice can be made with either being fully vaccinated or having a negative COVID test, we've given people both the choices.
Right.
But we recommend that people do both. We recommend that you're vaccinated. We recommend that you test. However, we accept either or, and we also offer rapid tests at the door.
Okay.
So we offer rapid tests at the door, and we have a COVID team that checks temperatures, and we have a COVID team that checks your vaccination or a negative COVID test. And that's what we've done. We've done that since we started doing events, even when LA County was not requiring that.
Right.
So when LA County fully opened in June, you could just go to events. We said no, we kind of want some kind of something, and that's what we decided, and we decided that that's what we would keep doing. Got
it. I guess in the lead up to things reopening last summer, I mean, how much planning went into kind of getting back into it? Like, were you just ready to go? Like, as soon as they say we can go again, like, we're just going to press the button and...
Yes and no. It was very I think it was like end of May, we're going to open in June, or it was like middle of May. Like, yeah, we're eyeing to announce that we can open in mid-June, but then like the official announcement came at the end of May. So we, due to the nature of what we do, we were able to, secure a venue. We had a whole local lineup. We did Compound, and we did all LA artists, Trunkit, Drum Cell, Developer, Silent Servant, and supporting acts. And so it was a big family affair and return to the dance floor. We pulled off, I think, a really, really sick party and a sick reunion. But yeah, it was kind of a little bit rushed, if you will.
Got it.
But it worked out.
Yeah, and now that, we're deeper into the reopening, I mean, obviously at this particular time, there's like a variant going around, which, people all know about, but like, do you feel like it's gotten easier as time has gone by, or are there challenges kind of the same as we continue like pressing through the pandemic here?
It was definitely, it's definitely, I don't know, like New Year's Eve, it seemed tougher for people. A lot of people were home sick with COVID, testing positive.
Yeah.
I cannot speak for everybody. I can say that at least I'm kind of grateful that it seems that people that were hit with COVID had it lighter than previous variants.
Yeah.
That's at least what seems to be my understanding from everybody I've spoken to.
Same.
Everybody in my household had it except me. But they all seem to have very light symptoms, which is positive. But I will admit, our New Year's Eve, New Year's Day attendance was not what we expected. It was still a great party, but it was not what we expected. Yep. I think across the board, a lot of people through events kind of suffered because of the Omicron variant being kind of at its height that week. But then we had a sold out show last week. Again, with all our COVID protocol in place, but then, was it also the booking, or was it that people kind of got over their being positive, COVID positive the week before, and then now we're able to come back? I don't know. It's hard to kind of pinpoint.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
But it's challenging to answer your question for sure.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I guess looking back on the time that you've been involved with 6 a.m. and also, with Synthetic Minds, are there any particular shows that you've thrown that stand out? This was a shining moment for me. In terms of the booking or just the way everything came together, et cetera.
I mean, there are several. The first Speedy J show that we did, July 3rd, it was one of the bigger warehouse, events that we did. Sweat was dripping from the ceiling. The vibe was thick. Speedy J is my favorite DJ.
Oh, okay.
Just the vibe in there was insane. But, since then, some other really, really, there's so many. The I Am Models one last week was one for the books for sure. We've had several compound editions that were phenomenal. The first one with Perk and Headless Horseman and Developer was fantastic, but the DVS one was great. The Stroboscopic Artifacts one was great. The Pampot one that we just had in November was fantastic. The Reform After Party with DVS1 that we curated with him, and we had an entire 70-foot wall of sound.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
okay.
It was the best production we've done.
Okay,
the sound was so amazing that nobody wanted to leave until 7 a.m. We could have kept going. That was insane. But we've had 9x9 sell out twice, and both of those warehouse parties were fantastic. When Luke Slater came back and played for the Synthetic Minds 2-year anniversary, that was also a fantastic night. There are so many to count.
Awesome.
But yeah, there's been a lot.
So I guess that also leads me to my follow-up, which is does it ever get tiring, right? Because you're week after week, or at least every other week, you're at these parties. You're probably there for a fair amount of it, if not the whole thing. Obviously everyone involved in the scene, including myself, does it because we love it, right? But does it ever get to the point where it feels like work?
Yeah, sure.
Or more like work than it should, right?
Yeah, I will say that 99% of the events do not feel like work. It's work, but it feels like it's a passion, it's something that I personally love doing. I could technically leave at 4 a.m. We have a team, we have a crew.
Right.
I stay back, I sweep, I clean up, I take all our inventory back to where we store it, I unload it. Personally, pretty much 99% of the nights. So, I'm not in bed until 7:30, 8 a.m. If the party ends at 6. So I will admit, there was a period when we were doing events, and this was probably the beginning of 2018, where the events were doing well, but the purpose, the passion wasn't there anymore. And I think that resonated with the experience in the crowd too. And maybe the two fed off of one another.
Interesting. So the energy was
off in the crowd.
Yeah.
The energy was off with me and some of our crew. And I think we hadn't fully figured out our purpose and intent of why we were doing what we were doing. We also had gotten into kind of a routine. We were not challenging ourselves. We were not properly, maybe working enough to improve the experience. And we were we had hit like just that period where kind of like, you know, you just got to revive your purpose. And it was something that we realized, something that I intentionally talked about with Gia. And, you know, we started to make changes with our staffing, with our processes, with the bookings, with our production, and we started to be a bit more purposeful with a lot of these things. And that just changed our mentality. It changed kind of like how it all went. And since then, I would honestly say that I've only been a few nights where, you know, maybe at 5:30 in the morning, I'm like, oh shit, I wish I was home in bed right now. Most of the nights, I'm like super happy to be there. I may be physically tired,
right?
But mentally, I'm like super ecstatic.
You want to be there,
yes, about what's going on. I'm happy about what we delivered.
Right.
I'm looking on social media. I'm seeing the feedback, and like all of that fires me up for the next one. It fires me up to close the night, clean up, and get ready for to get back to work on Monday.
So you mentioned sort of changing things to kind of revive the passion. What specifically were some of kind of the changes that helped you to kind of rebalance and kind of figure out why you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was like internal soul purpose searching, kind of just be like, all right, like these events are doing good. They're doing good in terms of like the attendance is there, the ticket sales are there, we're able to book artists, you know, it's not like we're making a killing, but like things are good, they're stable, like, all right, but like, is that it? Is that all we're doing? Like, where is this going? Like we just plateaued. So it was an element of just searching in and figuring out like, where is this going? What do we want to do? Like, we didn't think we were going to get here. We got here. Now what? And part of the answers to that question or those questions was figuring out our staffing and like really putting important, qualified, hardworking people in the right position on operations, figuring out our processes so just things would be smoother. And also purposefully just working more on delivering a better experience for our attendees, and just all of that together, as well as some kind of, you know, we talked about business. You know, sometimes like it's business, but it's just like building better team camaraderie, you know, with our crew.
It's like real like kind of fundamental organizational culture
exactly.
stuff.
It's not like just, I don't want to call it business. It's just building a team. And part of building a team is really like, you know, building the friendships within the team, the relationships, the camaraderie. And, you know, a lot of work goes into that. That's beyond just work and straight business kind of things. It's just more personal relationship building. And I think all of that played into kind of everything that's followed since the beginning of 2018.
Actually, sorry, man, can I ask you to move the mic a little closer to you? Awesome.
There you go.
You know, so like in kind of reviewing kind of the landscape of rave and SoCal right now, obviously everyone knows like Insomniac is the 1,000-pound gorilla, but in terms of dominance, it would appear to me that you guys are kind of like running for second there. Do you agree with that? Or like, I mean, who do you view as kind of, I mean, I'm sure it's all very friendly, right? Because you guys are partnering with each other and stuff, but like, who are, outside of Insomniac, who are like the dominant players? I mean, I would definitely think that you guys are kind of up there.
You know, there's a lot of great people doing great things. I mean, it also depends like what kind of events we're talking about. I mean, for example, Framework, you know, Sound nightclub, they're hosting Yuma 10 at Coachella.
Right.
Sound nightclub, they're also doing these events like they did the Fortet at Persian Square, the Solomon parties. I mean, those are massive productions.
That's true.
That's up there. Future Primitive, you know, they hosted...
they do the Gingling parties, right?
Gingling party. Yeah. They also did that Dixon Intervisions at Persian Square. Yep. I think they hosted Paradise in the Park. I mean, those are big productions. Maybe they do fewer in the year than we do, you know. We do maybe twice a month, but they're doing these kind of events. And then you got fantastic people like the Surround team, you know, that are doing the part that they did Honey Dijon.
Yeah, in the park.
At Grand Park. Mm-hmm. You got Lights Down Low. I mean, Lights Down Low's lineups are insanely good.
That's true. It is quite a big ecosystem.
So they're also doing. They also worked with Framework to do the Fortet party. and then there's the Set Inmo, and Next crew that are doing more melodic stuff, but then they've started to book harder techno now. So, there's obviously our friends Incognito, Dirty Epic, who we do Compound with.
Right.
Obviously with 6am, and our work parties and Compound and Reform, I would say we're definitely up there. But I think there's a lot of great people, and I think what this highlights is just how kind of flourishing the LA scene is, especially with like house, techno, tech house, the kind of more underground sounds, if you will.
Right.
I mean, it's booming right now, and I don't think that any of the people that I talked about are kind of like struggling, if you will. I think we're all doing good in our own right.
Got it. Yeah, and like, would you? Because I look at what's going on, in the scene right now, and I've talked about it before. It's like every weekend, like I can find at least like 4 parties that I want to go to, and that's new. That's like a newer thing. When Gio was on, we talked about how there used to just be 3 clubs. And you could choose between those 3, and it wasn't always a good lineup. So it's not like every week you would want to go out. Like now, it's like there's something.
Yeah.
It's like, so do you guys view this as kind of like we're in the golden age of rave, or is this just, I don't know, like, does it feel like a special boom time? Because it seems like that way.
Sure.
For me.
Yeah, I would agree with you. In my answer earlier, I just mentioned sort of the bigger, there's a ton of other promoters that are doing maybe smaller things, maybe less often, that are also equally good, more underground, more niche, kind of like our parties perhaps were years ago. How Synthetic Minds was when we first started. We were doing 200 people events. And all of that is great for the ecosystem. Just the same way I view Factory 93 and Insomniac and everything as they're doing, I don't view it as competition. I view it as the top of the funnel. Like, again, like we were talking about before, like all of these EDM fans or people that are getting into tech house, drum code,
Yeah, they're eventually going to make their way down into...
Just like kind of all of us did, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm happy that all of it is booming. And yes, I agree. It is kind of a boom era. I think... There was this kind of era in the 90s here in LA. I, admittedly didn't live here. But I know about it. I've studied. I've heard stories. It was just a different era because you would have a desert rave or a warehouse rave, and you had multiple rooms and a lot of different genres all packed into one. Mm-hmm. So you could go and there would be like the jungle room, the liquid D&B room, the techno room, and the trance room, right? Now it's kind of like it's more genre-specific parties and branded events. But yeah, I mean, if you compare it, I remember when I first decided to move to LA, I looked on RA and I was like, yeah, this is a healthy scene. But like, you compare it to now, 5-6 years later, it has grown exponentially, and there's a ton more things going on. Which
like RA is just like bursting at the seams now, like any given weekend. Like,
and not even all events are on RA.
Right.
Which is crazy.
But I definitely remember a time when like, there'd be like 3 or 4 events. Like, so it's just crazy. So it's interesting that, we're talking about how this is quite possibly the most difficult environment that, you've ever had to operate in. And yet at the same time, like one of the most busy and kind of booming environments. So it's an interesting sort of dichotomy there, especially when you bring in the fact that everything's getting so fucking expensive now.
Absolutely.
Which actually that brings up, like, how do you manage that without kind of, because I'm sure it's a delicate balance, right, between like increasing ticket prices, but then like pushing back on vendors to be like, you're charging way too much. Like, how do you guys navigate that balance in this environment?
We've had our conversation with vendors, and again, I'm not trying to say that what they're charging is not fair. In some cases, I think they were perhaps undercharging prior to the pandemic, and I think it's good that everybody should come out of a successful party making what they deserve to be making for their work. Let's also bear in mind that the promoter is the only one who takes a risk in terms of a loss. I mean, everybody else gets paid. The promoter doesn't, no matter what what happens if it's a loss. But the promoter can also make possibly more money. The risk and reward is there, right? As it is with kind of any investment or business. So we've talked to our partners, and we want to call them partners because our production partners, our staffing partners, whether it's security, our door staff, our bar staff, and so on. So, I feel like we found a good system and a good kind of agreement with them. We haven't really raised prices that much. I have noticed other promoters raising ticket prices to 60, even $70.
Yep.
For Compound and Reform, these are bigger production events. I mean, 2-3 times as expensive to produce as a normal work event, just to give an idea to anybody listening. But we haven't 2 or 3x the ticket price.
Right.
So maybe instead of the door price being, 40, it's 60 on New Year's Eve. I mean, on New Year's Eve too.
That's still like super reasonable.
Right, and on New Year's Eve, prices
party,
for staffing and everything is double.
Yeah.
So before, I think our door prices were anywhere between 30 and 35, very rarely 40. Now our door prices are 30 to 40 still, but more towards 40 for a busier night. So we've increased prices by about $5.
Okay, I mean that's it. Pretty fucking reasonable.
Yeah. So, and that's just the last tier. It's not like the first tier is starting at a later price. We've just added, another tier of tickets at the end, and that's obviously if the show is doing really, really well. Therefore, we have bigger venue, we have more security, we have bigger production. Then there's an extra tier that costs $5 more.
Got it. I mean, so it sounds like you guys are actually navigating it pretty well. Like you're not, I think everyone's happy. Like I don't think anyone's looked at your ticket prices.
I haven't honestly seen one comment about ticket prices, and I read almost every comment on Instagram, Twitter.
Okay.
So I never thought about it until we just talking about it right now. But I haven't read anything about ticket price.
Because I've been to some events which it's like I was glad to pay it, but it was also like, oh shit, like that's a little ouch. Mayan Warriors one I bring up, which is a fucking amazing party. Like like they can take my money anytime and I will like gladly pay for it. But I did notice, I remember for this year's, version of it, I was like, ooh, like I'm feeling the pinch a little bit more this year, right? Like on everything from, drink prices, ticket prices, etc. But I also acknowledge like that's just the environment that
it is. But we also realize that, man, there's people struggling out there that lost their jobs, who are behind rent payments, behind mortgage payments, who are struggling with having kids at home because they're not going to school, depending on which period of the pandemic we're looking at. They went through a whole pandemic, and like it's not like the government was that supportive.
Right.
Let's be honest. And so I don't know. I personally feel shitty charging $50 for a warehouse party, unless again we're talking about some DJ that really caught like if the economics are there where we have to do that in order to bring a DJ, we will. But if we can keep the prices at a point where it's affordable to anybody, no matter kind of how they're doing, then we're going to keep it that way.
Got it. Yeah. I saw that both Ben Klock and Marcel Detman are coming into town in the next like month or so. Are you guys involved with that?
No. Okay. We tried to get Marcel. I believe we were outbid on the booking. Well, no, we didn't, but one of our partners did.
Got it.
And I'm pretty sure Ben Klock has a cancellation from Escape.
Oh,
so I have a feeling he's going to be playing for Insomnia, kind of make up that cancellation.
Okay, got it. But I did see that on Instagram. I was like, wow, those are big names. I haven't been through here in a minute.
Yeah, no, they're both great bookings.
When we were kind of organizing this, you had mentioned that you were out of town. You didn't happen to be at Departures, that festival, were you?
I was not.
Okay,
no.
okay.
But I heard a lot about it.
Yeah, I went. Yeah. It was disappointing.
Yeah.
But at least it wasn't like Fire Fest vibes. Like we all had lodging.
Right, you were at lodging. I mean, you were in Paradise with a nice, and there were other parties going on. I assume.
There were other parties, but it was strange because they're saying, oh well, Departures is not happening because of COVID, and yet like you pop open Instagram and there's like huge events going on in Tulum and stuff. So there was definitely like
going around as to why that is.
Yeah, there was definitely and. There, I was aware of the rumors, and at some of the parties I went to, I was like, "Oh, the rumors are 100% true based on like."
Oh, I know how it is there, but let me tell you, like, as a promoter, how can you consciously throw a party with the niggling doubt in the back of your head that somebody can come in and do what happened to BPM.
Right.
I don't know. I myself went to Tulum for a non-party vacation with my wife 3 years ago, almost to the day, obviously. And I did go to day 0. And, my understanding at the time was, what happened with BPM and the shooting and the threats was solely dedicated to BPM. It was a BPM issue. But the more I've learned about what goes on over there, I've kind of learned that it's more about like, if there is money to be made there, everybody needs to get a cut. But also I've been inside the parties and I see that there are unfavorable elements at the parties. There are unfavorable elements around the hotels, openly around the hotels and the bathrooms in the high touristy areas.
Yep.
And I don't know, look, I mean, my worst nightmare as a promoter is that anything bad happens to an attendee or a staff member or anybody at one of my events, no matter what kind. And to me, I definitely feel like there is, I don't want to criticize or judge, but I definitely feel like there's, Tulum is a place where everybody wants to be. So a lot of people are cashing in on that, clearly, right? But there's a price to pay. So you either pay the price financially or you pay the price in some other kind of way. And at some point, I think you got to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? And people made their own decisions to go. People made their own decision to throw parties there. But perhaps this departure situation kind of brought a question like the safety of attendees. And like in a place like that, what does that really mean? We're talking about different levels of safety, right?
Yeah. I'm so glad that you mentioned all of that, because I saw it firsthand there at like the other parties that I went to, to try to substitute for departures. Like, it's like, I don't like, because I knew about what happened with BPM, and I thought, I guess the situation has changed. It's been 3 years or whatever, and the landscape has changed, and it's like a much safer situation. And I was like, oh no, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed from like what I read, like what I see in front of me now versus like what I read about what happened at BPM. It's the same shit. So just very interesting, like sort of like this hidden cost of going down there, right? Because you can open up YouTube and see Day 0 video and Mayan Warrior videos, and it looks beautiful and amazing. And it is beautiful and amazing.
It is.
But sort of there is a hidden price there that nobody really talks about.
And it's just that fine line of like, if that price doesn't get paid, then what happens? And like, you just have to hope that the organizers of the event you go to covered all their bases so that nobody comes in and there's another incident like happened at BPM. And like, it's hard to forget that when you're in paradise and perhaps, a few drinks in and the setting is beautiful and you have a cenote and like all of the rest is going on in front of you. But I mean, I don't know.
But yeah, it's super interesting. And, I was always aware of it, but I never knew the degree of that element being there until seeing it firsthand and be like, nobody who goes to Tulum ever comes back and talks about that. They just talk about how amazing the party was.
And I've heard like horror personal stories of people that had to deal with, dealers, cartel people on a personal level there. Not related to what happened at BPM, like other stories.
Yeah, interesting.
And,
and I saw articles that like people have been like tourists have been getting shot at raves like as recently as like November, December.
Or like if somebody thinks that you're selling something and it's their turf. They'll take you out to the back.
Or like what if you're consuming and somebody knows that you didn't get it from them? Does that happen to tourists? Did you buy that from me?
No,
type of shit?
I don't think that they can really know.
Yeah.
But there's been incidents like I've heard from a friend where he was giving something to somebody in their crew and that was mistaken as he was selling. So they took him to the back of the club in Playa and roughed him up.
Fuck.
And like roughed him up where he thought he was gonna die. It's just like, I don't know,
just for giving some shit to your friend, right?
Exactly. You know? So
well, I guess in lighter news, I know that you guys were planning a festival in Guam. I think it's postponed for the time being.
Correct.
But are there like what other plans kind of between both 6 a.m. and Synthetik Minds are there for kind of that type of large scale production?
So the festival in Guam is called Electric Island Festival. GIA a CEO founder of 6am, is from Guam.
Right.
So, it's always been his life's mission to bring back what changed his life, electronic music, to Guam. And he's been doing it. I mean, I think it would be the 9th year anniversary, if I'm not mistaken. So that 6am initiative, has been going on every year, and it's the biggest electronic music event that happens on the island. I mean, I've been there. I've been to Guam. I've been to an EIF. It's crazy. I mean, the amount of energy, support, love that the island gives to EIF is insane. I mean, it's in a very small scale, there's like a mini EDC and a mini Insomniac event, fireworks and everything. Like it's pretty heartwarming to see. So we're hoping to be able to do that again. Absolutely. And maybe more than one edition a year. There's plans, but obviously, just like with any state in the United States, they have their own COVID protocol and regulations. But in LA, we're planning Reform. Reform's
phenomenal. I was at that one with Danny Tenaglia.
Right. It was a really, really, really cool party, and the after party was actually even better than the day party, which wasn't intentional. We realized that maybe the main event should be better or as good as the after party. So that's our plan for this year. Our plan for this year for Reform, which is scheduled to be on April 2nd weekend, is to throw the kind of experience that we threw at the Reform by Night with DVS Swan for the main event, which will be evening into night, and then to have an after party. And we are this close to finalizing the lineup and to announce by the end of January.
Sick.
And then we're going to do that again on Labor Day weekend. So we're trying to grow this boutique festival, really focusing on proper house and techno, and then proper production that kind of brings a little bit of that European vibe mixed with the LA warehouse vibe.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The one thing, and I told Gia this when he was here, is if you guys could arrange for there to be lasers this time around, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, well, we had lasers at 8 models last week.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Okay.
we did. So we try to change up the production.
Gia did tell me that it's a pain in the ass because you have to bring in like a whole separate guy to do like the lasers, and it's like a whole thing. But as a consumer, I gotta say, like anytime there's lasers, I just lose my fucking shit. So.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like some people like it, some people don't.
Interesting. Okay.
I think also lasers depends on how they're used, because depending on the genre, like trance, for example, a ton of lasers, moving, scanning. Techno, you can use it more of a strobing type of effect, which is what we did last week with our models. I got to show you some sick videos after the interview. For Reform, it also all depends on the artist. If we're curating the production with an artist, like we did with DVS One, we had the whole wall of sound, that we had intelligent lighting on the whole ceiling.
Oh shit!
I don't think you probably didn't come to the after party.
I didn't see that. Yeah.
I'm gonna also show you that video after this, because that was again the best produced event we've ever done.
Got it.
I mean, it people were walking in. I was at the door, like, holy shit, we're at ADE. I heard people say that walking in the door, saying, holy shit, we're in Europe. Like, and that's not to say that we're trying to copy ADE. It was our own version of just a really well-produced warehouse type of massive techno event.
How do you decide what production you're going to go with? Like, how do you decide, well, we're going to have a wall of this and we're going to have this laser? Like, is there a committee that meets and kind of just figures it out, or?
It's mostly me in terms of being the events director of 6am and owner of Synthetik Minds. So I kind of take the lead, but I definitely discuss it with Gia. It depends on budget, on the sound and the artist, on the budget, on the venue. Some venues, the ceilings are too high to like put lighting without spending money on scissor lifts, and like it's just not.
Oh man, so much logistics.
Right. So like it depends, right? Some other venues, like the ceilings are too low, you cannot really have massive visuals. Whereas like where we did the after party for Reform, where we did Compound with Pampa, it's a 26-foot ceiling by 90 feet. So like the visuals were immense. And so you can truly immerse the crowd with visuals in that case. So it just, again, it depends really on the space, the budget, and the artist, the sound. And then you also want to change it up.
Right. Because I think, was it for Compound with Pampa that you guys brought in like a special visuals guy from somewhere? We
actually kind of almost always do that for Compound. So we've brought VJs in from Amsterdam and Berlin, and there's been 3 separate VJs that we brought in from foreign countries. And then we also have Cloaking, who's based in LA, who's a really, really sick VJ. So we've used him for Compound. And we always try to change it up, also so that the visuals kind of have a different vibe, because they all have their signature like look, right?
Got it.
The visuals always change, but the VJ himself has his signature brand.
Right,
visual.
yeah. It's the aesthetic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting, man, because I feel like with other things like movies, TV, even music sometimes, or not music, like mainstream music, you know, when I get sort of the behind the scenes and see how the sausage is made, it sort of diminishes my enjoyment for it. But I feel it's the exact opposite, you know, like talking to you and Gia and obviously all of the artists who come on the show, you know, the more I find out about like what's going on behind the scenes, like, you know, the more I'm compelled by it. And I hope that, you know, the audience watching kind of feels the same way. And, you know, with that, you know, we're hitting time here. So just want to thank you again. This has been such a good conversation. Like, I feel like I've learned so much personally. I hope that the people out there feel the same. And I guess before we sign off, what do you want to plug before we head off here? Obviously, you know, you guys have a lot going on. So.
Sure. Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. I feel like we could have talked for another couple of hours.
Easily.
And perhaps, you know, it's my first time meeting you. And perhaps we'll have the chance to just talk more. And I'll show you those videos after this. Congrats on the interview series. It's great what you're doing here. It's awesome to have a platform where we can connect with the community and kind of give a behind the scenes look at what we do, whether you're, you know, an artist, a promoter, no matter what you're doing in the industry. I think that it's fantastic. But yeah, to answer your question, on the event side of things, we are really, really excited for the shows that we have coming up. You know, I don't know when this interview is going to air exactly or be...
in like 5 or 6 days from now.
Okay, so, well, then next week, on Saturday, we have 9x9 coming back, 5-hour set. Okay. It's going to be a sold-out show.
Sick.
So... if anybody sees this and you don't have your tickets yet, get tickets because it's going to sell out. After that, we've announced, as we were mentioning, Ken, Progressive House Nights with Antotuma on February 5th. We have the return of Anitha with D-Dan and Annika Wolf on February 19th. We're going to announce Compound for...
Oh, another one.
Yes.
Okay.
The next one, the spring edition, is getting announced possibly next week, maybe the week after, so I cannot say. On March 4th, I know it's the day before Crossed. It's a Friday, but it's the Synthetik Minds 4-year anniversary, and it's my proudest booking, and I think our biggest, best booking that we've ever done. Okay. I can announce it. I will tell you after this.
This is the Detroit Techno?
It's the Detroit Techno. Okay. So we're hoping to announce it next week. We're waiting for the green light. Really, really excited for that one. And then continuing at the end of March, well, actually the beginning of April 2nd and 3rd, we have Reform. It's really us taking the next step into delivering like a proper house and techno experience in LA.
Well, you're doing an April Reform and then a Labor Day Reform?
Yes.
Awesome.
So we have 2 editions, First weekend of April and Labor Day.
Got it.
That's kind of like the cadence that we're going to try to keep. That's our goal, to keep every year 2 editions.
Got it.
Think about it like kind of Cross does a spring and a fall.
Right. Okay.
Similar, if you will. Okay. So we're finalizing the lineup, and then we're going to drop that. And I think that is the one that we're hoping the community supports the most out of anything, because if we can really show you guys what we have planned and we can really pull off what we want, I think this is kind of the beginning for, you know, something a little different than what else is going on in LA in terms of an above ground day into evening mini festival experience. Right. So we're hoping that a lot of you guys watching and the LA community gives that a chance. And, you know, there's a lot more planned. We've a lot planned with the shop too, in terms of new merch. We're also going to be working to be present at a lot of festivals. Like we're going to be down across for San Diego. So if anybody's across and wants last minute house and techno merch, we're going to be there. Beyond Wonderland, we're going to be there. Body Language, we're going to be there at New Festival in Arizona. Okay. We're going to be a Movement doing after parties and merch. So yeah, there's a lot in motion.
Chief Growth Officer in action, doing a lot.
That's the game plan. That's the game plan.
Awesome. And then people can follow you at Synthetik Minds on Instagram with a K, correct?
Synthetik Minds with a K, correct.
And we'll make sure to have links to all of that stuff in the description of this video. So make sure you guys check that out. Also, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button, hit the bell. And that's it. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks again, man.
Thanks for having me.